Well, the conversation is sustainable agriculture, to be specific, biodiversity. We are having a conversation surrounding this. And of course, if you have any questions, the hashtag is KTNNewsSpecial. Reach me out there on Twitter and I shall be sampling that. We are speaking to Dr. Hamadi Idiboga and Maina and Dr. Wafula Wasike on matters biodiversity and soil preservation. And now let us get back to this conversation. Dr. Boga, we start with you right now. The issue of what's unaddressed before the break, the issue where we are losing ground to the so-called multinationals. I understand we are in a global economy. Is there ways to control some of the issues and concerns that she has raised?
I think it's an interesting topic that Anne is presenting there. But basically, it's a product of urbanization and the fact that there is a rural-urban migration. And of course, there is what we call modernity. I used to spend my childhood as a kid on the farm with my mother, growing all manner of things, chasing pests, monkeys, and so on and so forth. My kids have never touched a hoe. Majority of the farmers are 60 years and above. Majority of the consumers are 17 years. That is the average age of the consumer. So that is the dynamic. So who is the farmer? Who will be the farmer? Now, in terms of, because of this rural-urban migration and the desire to feed urban communities are socialized to get their foods from markets and shops. And we expect the rural communities to transmit the food there. And we expect the food in enough quantities to be able to sustain those populations in urban areas. And I think in the West, where modernization and urbanization arrived much earlier, the contribution of agriculture to their GDP is somewhere between 1% to 2%. So you find most of the farming is from large-scale farming entities. Of course, there are a few family farms, but most of it is large-scale farming, which is supported by these companies because you need machinery, you need chemistry, you need quality seeds, and you need science to support all that. So the evolution of these corporates was just a natural phenomenon because of the way the society was evolving. And I think even in our case here, we are following a similar trajectory. So you can see similar patterns emerging. But because nowadays people are having these conversations about climate issues, environmental issues, and sustainability issues, there is a pause in the model. And I think even the corporates, they are not heartless people. Of course, everybody is in this for business and resources, but I think they are sensitive to the sentiments that are being shared to be responsible. I think almost every corporate that we have interacted with have a social, environmental, ecological dimension. And I think Anne and the people in that sector should continue to challenge the governments and also to continue challenging the corporates to behave responsibly because our survival as a human race depends on it because our own activities can destroy us. And so based on new knowledge that we are generating, we can adjust course, we can change things here and there so that we have a sustainable planet. And I think it's not, I wouldn't like to take the tone of a demonization of this or that category of people. I would rather see it as new knowledge that is informing our farming systems and the way we organize our society. And I think our rural communities who are struggling, largely there the challenge is the challenge of extension. We need to have robust extension, both by the corporates who are giving the products as well as by government entities and as well as by our regulatory agencies, so that we get food that is safe and that is wholesome and nutritious for everybody. Because you don't want to be eating things that have not been farmed properly and where the good agricultural practices have not been upheld. And I think the whole world is keen to make sure that there is good agricultural practices, there is good manufacturing practices, there are systems that we have put in place to make sure that food is safe, and that there are standards that have been agreed globally with the FAO and WHO at the Codex Alimentarius. But I think everybody has to make an extra effort. Those who are advocating should advocate some more. Those who are working in the labs should work some more, and those who are in the corporate sector should listen and adjust their mechanism. As a government, we are regulating the space, and every time we come across new knowledge, we adjust our regulations to make sure that the consumers are protected, but also the farmers and the companies that are doing business are facilitated.
Professor Boga, maybe before I speak to Dr. Wasike, there's been this concern of pesticides, because we are talking about, sustainable agriculture, safe agriculture, that the product is nutritious. There's been concern some pesticides are not even allowed to be close to Europe. Maybe that's a different ecosystem that we are talking about. But this issue of pesticides, help us understand what exactly is happening about the pesticides that we are using.
I think what you need to understand, and what everybody needs to understand, is that in agriculture you need seeds, which is your genetics, and you need quality chemistry, and a quality chemistry that is safe. And that is why organizations like the Pest Control Product Board was put in place. That is why organizations like KEFIS is in place, to make sure that chemistry which we need to manage pests, otherwise we would be growing the food for pests, is the chemistry that is used is safe, is efficacious. It will lead to the desired product. And I know sometimes when we do some of our random surveys, we see that some of the material that we use are not even efficacious. They have low potency. So sometimes you find farmers struggling. Yesterday I met a young farmer in Yatta, and they had grown a quarter acre of very good tomatoes, and they lost them to tutor absoluta because the product was not of high quality. When they were spraying, it was not effective. So the debate about pesticides is a bit more complex. They are a necessary evil. So long as we don't have alternatives that are efficacious, we have to balance using what is known as, what Anne has called, integrated pest management, where you have cultural methods, where you have a bit of chemistry, and where you have also biopesticides. But all this requires a lot of understanding on the part of the farmer. And our smallholder farmers are not really endowed with knowledge. And also, not for every pest that you come across, you will have a biological control method. Sometimes chemistry or chemical pesticides are the only solution for that particular issue. For example, when we had the locusts flying around here, we bought both biopesticides as well as chemical pesticides, phenyltrethione and deltamethrin. Once you spray with the phenyltrethione or deltamethrin, you see the effect immediately. There are swarms we sprayed with biopesticides, which is metarhizium. 20 days they were still flying around. Even now they are still flying around because the temperatures are too low for controlling, because the metarhizium was developed for desert kind of environment where the temperatures are much higher. So there are a lot of parameters when you are thinking about pest control, and we allow products based on the fact that they are effective, the fact that they are safe, and the fact that they will do the job. But also, all these institutions that we have created are meant to make sure that the pesticides are used properly, and farmers are trained on their use, and that the withdrawal period that Anne has talked about is adhered to. But this is a lot of work for all of us because we are dealing with the smallholder farmers whose education level sometimes is quite low. But I think we need to keep on working on it, improving our system, replacing some of the more toxic chemicals. You'll be surprised at the beginning of the agrarian revolution, even arsenic was a pesticide. Even mercury were pesticides because they could kill some of these germs. But over time, people replaced them and moved to safer methods. And I'm sure it's an evolutionary process. And this space is still evolving. We keep reviewing some of the molecules and discussing. For example, we have written to some of the companies that produce this to see if we can move away from some of the chemicals that are problematic, not just because they're problematic in Europe, but we want to see data. We want to see data because sometimes we can make pronouncements, but if there is no data, it's just an opinion. It's not a scientific fact that you can use in making decisions. And so we are also encouraging our scientists to collect data, give us evidence of all these assertions so that we can use in decision-making processes, but also encouraging the companies themselves to innovate and develop safer products, because in that case, we are all safe and we are all protected.
Dr. Wasike, Professor Boga has touched on, the evolution, what is happening in the current agricultural ecosystem. In your space, dealing with genome editing technology, because things are changing. There's the argument of GMOs vis-a-vis this genome editing technology. Maybe elaborate for us. Under your institute, are you doing this genome editing technology to enhance some of your storages, the genes, to be more sustainable? And how exactly is this affecting our biodiversity in the long run?
Thank you. We as CARO currently have not released any GMO as far as we know. We, however, are working with international partners to test GMOs that would be of use to our community. For instance, about 56% of the costs in producing cotton go towards pesticides, and the only way you get farmers to get profit out of it is to get alternatives. And we are working with international partners on GMO, BT cotton in this case, and it's under environmental evaluation with the biosafety authority in Kenya. But so far at the Gene Bank, we are not engaging at all in any genome editing of any kind. We embrace the natural methods of propagating plants that is safe. We also want to make sure that there is no genetic drift arising out of material that would have come in having genome edited, and that's also not something that is encouraged by organizations like this country. So the new technologies, for us, our scientists are working very hard to update their knowledge on advanced techniques in GMO technology. That is something that so far we have not undertaken so far.
So genome editing, this technology is not yet in effect, but you're partnering with other people out there to explore some of the safest ways. And I want to bring you in. All this, when you advocate for biodiversity and biosafety in Kenya, is about the people, the consumers. And the biggest discussion that we're having as a country right now is food security. A third of the world, of the 7 billion people, a third of them are not getting nutritious food. So in regards to pushing this agro biodiversity, are there steps that you're seeing as an association towards achieving the issue of food safety and food security as a country?
Yes, maybe also to mention a statistic there. If you look at the statistics, is that the issue of food security is not about issues of people not. It's an issue of people not having access and affording food, like you see in many of the countries. There are populations where there's a lot of food wastage, and others are overfeeding themselves, and others are going hungry. But to your question, last year, my organization, Biodiversity and Biosafety Association of Kenya, together with the Route to Food Alliance, with the Kenya Organic Agriculture Network and Resources-Oriented Development Initiatives, we submitted a petition to Parliament, to the Health Committee, calling for the banning of 8 ingredients that are found in the 8 toxic ingredients found in our pesticides that are used in the country, as a move towards securing our food systems. My colleagues have talked about issues of farmers, and I've also alluded to it, not adhering to the withdrawal period. In our working with our partners on the ground, part of the reason, and it will be interesting to look at this, part of the reason, for example, why a farmer would spray their tomato today and take it to the market tomorrow, and maybe there's a 14 or 21 day withdrawal period that is required. Some of it is demands from the market. The market, the people who are buying in the market, suppliers, say that spray today and bring it to the market tomorrow. The reason being that it has a longer shelf life, so they're expecting within 2 or 3 weeks we still have our tomatoes, and they will not have maybe become squishy or something like that. And that is a big challenge. I think together working with our partners and collaborators, it's very important for us to look at that issue, the role of the market, the role of the chain there, the people who are in the chain before the product gets to the market, because they also demand for that. And also, if you look at the challenges of climate change, some of the, for example, if you go to Mile Narok, where we have huge wheat plantations, what the farmers do is that just when the crop is drying up, so sometimes some has not dried completely, so they come with they use some of these herbicides, and the controversial one, you know it, Roundup, spray. It's a desiccant. The wheat dries uniformly, and they harvest, and they grow the next crop. Part of it is the pressures, for example, of climate change. The farmer maybe sees the rains are coming, the wheat crop is going to be destroyed. And so in terms of food security, food safety, we have taken those steps. On the ground, working with our members, we represent 60 member organizations, from CBOs to faith-based organizations. We have been conducting what we call trainings on integrated pest management. Because the farmer, when you tell them and you talk to them about the dangers of these pesticides, some of them are lost. They tell you, what do we do? Like tomato farmers cry in the field. We cannot manage our farmers, our tomato crop without using pesticides. Professor spoke about tuta absoluta. It destroys huge amounts of tomatoes. But the farmers have to be taught how to start practicing integrated pest management from when they start planting the crop, from when it is young, so that they are able to manage the pesticides. And once we do this awareness creation, creating a lot of knowledge with the farmers, they understand the reasons, and then they start demanding for the biopesticides. And a few manufacturers now are realizing there's a market for that, and are producing it. And not much knowledge, or you know, some of those farmers, some of those manufacturers may not have the money that the big agencies or the big multinationals have to advertise, but those biopesticides are in the market. And we are happy that Ministry of Agriculture, for example, when we called for use of biopesticides to manage locusts, they heeded the call, and they brought it. And I'm sure we are working together in terms of improving, because at the end of the day, it's my health, it's your health, it's all Kenyans' health. So if we produce crops in the right way, safe way, it is for the benefits of all of us.
Definitely. And now to Professor Boga. You know, Anne has noted some of the challenges that we are seeing with the small-scale farmers. Majority of our farmers is highly information, but there's also the issue of, you know, the costs yeah, the costs in regards to farm inputs, for example. And recently, there was the issue about, importing fertilizers in the country. Before we speak about solutions in general, the issue of costs, is there any mitigation to see that costs are reducing for our farmers also not to have that pressure that is being generated by the market at the end of the day? Is there an intentional effort to reduce costs, Professor?
Before I talk about the costs, allow me to talk a little bit about the issue of gene editing. I think there are some diseases, like the maize lethal necrosis disease, which was wiping maize in parts of Kenya for I think in 2016, 2017, that period, and which is still around. There are two methods. Of course, you can breed for resistance, which takes a long time, or you can do this gene editing technology, which they brought, CIMIT and CALRO, where you basically change the gene that is targeted by the maize lethal necrosis virus, and the virus is not able to enter the maize and affect it in that way. You haven't added a gene in this case, you have just deleted a gene, which makes that plant to be susceptible to a particular virus. So from where we stand when we look at this, is a solution that removes pesticides, that doesn't alter the genetic makeup of the plant, doesn't lower its productivity, but it removes a very serious challenge. And a similar solution is also available for the cassava mosaic and cassava streak viruses, being done by our scientists in CALRO. It's very good work. And I think we should pay attention to that, because most of these viral diseases, you can't manage them any other way apart from either genetic improvement using breeding, which is still a form of genetic modification, or these new methods of gene editing. So I think this is a space where we should keep an open mind. As far as and also other technologies that are coming, most of these genetic engineering methods, which are called GMOs, have come to address the issue of pesticides, because people wanted to move away from chemical pesticides, and that's why they moved towards biopesticide. And when the biopesticides were not working because you are spraying a live organism on tomatoes, then it rains, so it struggles to establish itself. Why not have the killing agent of that organism in the tomato? That was the science, so that way the tomato is immunized, and then you avoid the chemical pesticide. But I think that is a big debate. I think it's not a scientific debate, and it's also not a safety debate. It's more a lifestyle debate, whether we want our things to be modified or not. But I think people should have the freedom to make certain choices. But once the science is clear, I think our decisions should be guided by the science. As far as the issue of the cost of inputs, I think this is a major debate for farmers globally. And I think in this case, as government, we try to zero rate some of the inputs or even tax exempt some of the inputs. And we are always in discussions with the input suppliers to around the taxation regime to make it more affordable. But I think also we want to relook at the whole supply chain for those inputs to see what are the cost drivers. Because our neighbors around, like Tanzania, they are getting some of these inputs at very low cost. So there must be something that we need to fix. And at the same time, you can address it the other side. I think part of the challenge with our farmers, and that is why they are struggling with the cost, is the issue of productivity. So for example, a maize farmer in Kitui, for example, or Makueni, will get maybe 0.5 metric tons per hectare. These are figures from Calro. So already they have lost because their colleague in Trans Nzoia is getting 3 metric tons per hectare. Their colleague in Ethiopia is getting 6 metric tons per hectare. Their colleague in the US is getting 12 metric tons per hectare with the same cost of production. So sometimes the cost of production becomes an issue because of low productivity, and this is because of poor agronomic practices, and that means we need to make sure that our farmers do the soil testing. Most of them don't. Only 8% of Kenyan farmers test their soils before applying the fertilizer. So most of the time they're applying the wrong fertilizer, so that is another cost. And so if we invest in educating our farmers about good agricultural practices, I think we can address also some of the cost issues by addressing increased productivity. And we are looking at the extension policy. The Constitution devolved the extension to the counties, but we have noticed in the 8 years of devolution, extension has gotten worse. And I think we need to have a honest conversation with all extension workers and actors so that we can have a regime that supports the farmer to do the right thing and to be able to profit from their efforts while keeping all of us safe, of course, by engaging in good agricultural practices.
So at that particular point, heavy points right there by Professor. Of course, we discuss a lot in regards to the cost of production in the country, why our food is so expensive, saying it's a collaborative effort. The farmers look at productivity and also the government look at other mitigating factors. But on that particular note, Front Row takes another break. Of course, keep your questions and engagement coming on our social media platforms. We shall be sampling them at the tail end of this program. Right now, we go for a break.